The Lenovo Tab M8 has been around for many years, now brand new in its 4th generation. Typically we get a solid 8-inch display, a reasonably usable processor and pure Android. That always resulted in a good entry-level tablet. However, my review of the Lenovo Tab M8 Gen 4 shows that it disappoints with one important feature this year. But let's start with the design first. The Tab M8 Gen 4 looks like a typical Lenovo tablet, but they have adjusted the design slightly this year. They abandoned the metal casing and instead the latest version is completely made of a grey plastic. It doesn't feel too cheap though, as the back is engraved with a pattern of triangles with a light texture. It's not particularly thin at 8.9mm, but only weighs 320 grams. It's charged using a USB-C 2.0 port, has a 3.5mm headphone jack, and you can expand the storage thanks to a microSD card slot. If you hold the tablet in landscape orientation, there are 2 speakers on the right and left side. Obviously, the bass could be better, but it's sufficiently loud for this price range and the sound quality is okay. Only acceptable as the cameras. Both the 2-megapixel front camera and the 5-megapixel main camera lack details. That's normal for a cheap tablet, of course. Even very cheap smartphones usually take much better photos and videos. The Tab M8 Gen 4 has an 8-inch display with a resolution of 1280 by 800 pixels, so the pixel density has not changed since the 1st generation. And competitors like the MediaTek Mini and Nokia T10 don't have a sharper display either. HD on 8 inches is usable, and we have to live with it anyways. I like the fact that it's a fully laminated display, unlike the Amazon Fire HD 8, which is another direct competitor. However, it's a pity that it's relatively dark. According to the Lenovo online store spec sheet, it's 350 nits bright, and I compared it with the 400 nits Lenovo Tab M9. The latter is noticeably brighter and especially more pleasant to use outdoors. However, the M8 is bright enough for indoors. All other properties of the screen are okay, except for another weakness that I noticed. Since the tablet has a wideband level of L3 only, you cannot watch Netflix with HD resolution. Movies and TV shows can be watched in SD quality only. However, you can select HD on YouTube. The Tab M8 Gen 4 is equipped with the MediaTek Helio A22 quad-core processor. In addition, there's 2GB, 3GB or 4GB of RAM and 32GB or 64GB internal storage. In Germany, RAM based, just the version with 4GB RAM and 64GB storage is available at the moment for 179 euros. That is the version I have. What's very interesting is that the Helio A22 quad-core processor is weaker than the Helio P22T octa-core chip that sits in the 3rd generation. Despite the weaker processor, however, we get a higher RAM option with 4GB. In the Geekbench 5 benchmark comparison, you can see that the performance is significantly weaker than other 8-inch tablets like the Nokia T10, MediaTek Mini and Amazon Fire HD 8 Plus. The Lenovo Tab M9 is also a lot more powerful, which is even a bit cheaper, but only has 3GB of RAM. The 4GB of RAM is great, and I think that is the reason why the Geekbench 5 compute test runs, but spits out a very weak result. The compute test does not work on other competitors like the Samsung Galaxy Tab A7 Lite, for instance. The 3D Mark Wildlife test, which I usually run, does not work on the M8. The chipset is too weak for that. However, you can see in the 3D Mark Slingshot test that the graphics performance is significantly weaker than the Amazon Fire 7 and even a bit weaker than the Lenovo Tab M7 Gen 3. Both cost less than $100. So, based on the benchmarks, the Tab M8 Gen 4 is no gaming tablet. And indeed, Apex Legends, for example, cannot even be installed. However, PUBG Mobile runs and is playable when setting the graphics to balance, which is pretty low. HD graphics cannot be selected. Simple games like Grimvalor run great, really well, and the performance for Chrome, YouTube and Feedly is not bad at all. I think this is also due to the 4GB of RAM. If you're looking for a tablet mainly for reading and watching a bit of YouTube, the performance is okay. Not more than okay though, because you may experience some lags. The performance of the Lenovo Tab M9 is much better in a direct comparison, especially for games, but also for other applications. It is a real pity and also a bit strange that Lenovo uses such a weak chipset for the M8, but gives the tablet 4GB of RAM. The operating system is Android 12, although some variants are also supposed to come with Android 12 Go. I guess this applies to the version with 2GB of RAM. The Go edition is a slimmed down version of Android for devices with weaker hardware. But as I said, my model is the one with 4GB and it's running Android 12. As typical for Lenovo, the interface is almost not customized, it's pretty much pure Android. All of Google's apps are pre-installed, and as always this includes Kids Space and Google Entertainment Space. I never use it and you can turn it off in the settings anyway. Lenovo's website says that the M8 Gen 4 is upgradable to Android 13. I hope that means it will get an update to Android 13. After that, however, I don't expect any major updates. The battery life is surprisingly good, which is certainly also due to the weaker processor and especially the darker display. In my test it reached a runtime of 11 hours. For that, an HD YouTube video always runs in a loop at maximum brightness. Let's end this Lenovo Tab M8 Gen 4 review. Can I recommend it? Well, not really. The display is a bit dark, but bright enough for home use and otherwise good. The build quality is solid, the speakers are okay, we get reasonably up-to-date Android, and a long battery life. With 4GB and 64GB of storage, we also get quite high storage options. However, it's quite a shame that the processor inside is so weak. And weaker than the predecessor. That is the bitter disappointment here. I'm guessing that's also due to rising prices and inflation. However, they're simultaneously launching the Lenovo Tab M9 with a much stronger chipset and a brighter display. At 9 inches it's only a bit larger, and I reviewed the M9 as well. Even crazier, by the way, is that currently the Tab M9 with 3GB RAM and 32GB storage is €20 cheaper than the Lenovo Tab M8 Gen 4 with 4GB and 64GB. Sure, more memory is cool, but in this case I think the processor is much more important. Obviously, prices change in the future and also vary by region.